What's going on, team? It's Jacob. Welcome to another episode of the Master Your Craft Study. We are on the tail end of Hurricane Florence as this episode was recorded, and I'm now a few days removed recording this intro, but if you're on video, you can see right behind me, it's bright and sunny outside. And I just wanted to share this. This is very much off the topic of athletics or athletic excellence, but I thought it was really meaningful. I noticed a lot of different people or industries, such as, say, the university that I work at, USC-Aiken, who took in, housed, or provided different accommodations or help or aid or assistance to all the people that were on the coast. USC-Aiken had tons of, I don't want to say refugees, but tons of evacuees that came from the coast to live in Aiken for a little bit. And I'm sure that there are cities all the way up and down the coast that needed places like that to stay. And for those of you individuals that house people, or universities or companies that decided to help people in any way, I think that that's really cool, and I want to commend you for that. That's kind of that's one of the few things left in the American spirit that I absolutely love to see and get excited about. I think the whole taking care of each other mentality is something that is really special, and it tends to only come out in times of crisis or tragedy, but it is still present, and I think it's worth noting. We've got to promote those things that are positive. So I commend all of you that helped anyone who was in need during that hurricane. I know the coast got hit pretty hard. Our fan shout out this week goes to Irvin Johnson. Irvin sent me a message on Facebook and says, "Hey Jake, my brother, just here to let you know that I love all the work you're doing, especially the MYC study, and just your positive message in general." Irvin, I really appreciate that, man. I truly believe, I wrote a blog post about it recently, but I truly believe that if you're someone who values a leadership role, or if you want to be in a leadership role, it's really important that you're meeting people on their medium. I'm kind of making a big call to leaders in general that we need to meet people on these social accounts and be a positive message. There's so much nonsense out there, not just the junk that doesn't educate you or doesn't contribute to your intelligence, but there's also just quite literally tons of negativity. And we've got to drown that out with a positive message. As someone who I really enjoy listening to, Jay Shetty, says, we've got to make wisdom viral. And I really can appreciate that. For us on this show, making wisdom viral looks like bringing on coaches, players, and trainers who have a positive message to share and trying to educate anyone and everyone who's willing to listen to them and to learn from them. So here in the sports world, this is what we're going to continue to do. And I think the Master Your Craft study is all about sending positive messages and trying to help people become better at their craft. Today's guest was an All-American in high school. He was phenomenally exciting to watch from people that I've talked to that saw him play coming up. He's still the all-time leading scorer at his high school, Richland Northeast, near Columbia, South Carolina. He played for USC, the Gamecocks, and I went back and looked. He's top 10 in like every statistical category of all time. Games played, minutes played, number of starts, assists, steals. He's a 1,000-point scorer. He's an unbelievable talent on the basketball court. He went on to play, I believe, 7 years as a professional basketball player, and then when he came back, he's been doing training with basketball players for some time, and he's also been a high school coach, both head and assistant, as he goes through his coaching career. He coaches basketball, but he's a career development facilitator by trade, meaning counseling, mentoring. His roles at the university have a lot to do with guiding the youth and with guiding people in the right directions and making the right choices. So much of what he has to say is directly correlated to the messages we're sending here on the Master Your Craft study. This conversation with Aaron could have gone so many different directions and not just with sports, and we did tail off on a few different things, but it's fascinating to hear his perspective. Aaron's a tremendously insightful and intelligent person who's got a very healthy level of skepticism and analysis on things in the world, and I think that you'll really enjoy this episode. So, enough of me. Without further delay, here's our conversation with Aaron Lucas. Aaron, welcome to the Master Your Craft study, brother. How you doing today?
Doing pretty good. It's an early morning waiting on Hurricane Florence to breeze through here.
You think we'll get hit pretty hard with it? It's supposed to hover over us for a little while, but I don't think it'll be too bad.
It's hurricane season. We do this every year, so.
Let's I'm going to jump right into it with a tough one. Tough question. Sure. What do you like least about the game of basketball, Aaron?
Least about the game, I would say in my experiences, it's become more business driven. It's more product versus substance.
Commercial.
It's very commercial now. Exactly. It's just to a point now where everything has to have a catch. Um, not on a professional level. It's I think it's more about getting the deals, getting the marketability, getting um, the bigger opportunities outside of the sport,
Right.
which has permeated the game in a sense of it's very difficult to watch in certain aspects. The collegiate game, I think, is just a trend that goes towards the professional level,
Yeah.
but it still has some of its innocence, which I appreciate the college game a lot more than the professional game at this point. Um, High school is kind of a mixture of the two. You still have the freedom to feel like you're getting the marketability, but it still has that innocence, and the kids just they don't know the next level business marketing aspect of it, so they don't get too ingrained in it. But social media is a platform that gives them a taste of it.
Yeah, absolutely. We had Zion Williamson here in state this past year. I can't imagine being a high school player or coach in that environment where you're essentially subject to all of that marketing or exposure. I look back at it and would call it nonsense. I mean, it's good for him individually, but that's also something that's hard to handle or hard to really grasp what it truly means at that age. And sometimes that can ruin folks. And we see a lot. Some people handle it great. That's one reason why I don't claim to be a LeBron fan, but I think that the fact that he had so much exposure so early and he wound up with a pretty good mindset now, that's rare. Do you think that commercial aspect of the game is only getting worse? Do you think that athletes are going to get more and more subject to that as we go here?
Oh, no question. I think with entrepreneurship at its peak right now, I think in the economy, um, marketability is going to continue to grow and perhaps get worse. Um, the example I can use, and this is not a knock on the brand, but um, when you start seeing professionals wear brands that you've never heard of from shoe companies, they're marketing a brand that I would say, let's just be real, kids aren't going to go buy that particular shoe. I don't think personally, but at the same time, it still leaves the doors open for entrepreneurship, gives people opportunities to have a chance to shine in a, lack of a better term. Um, but at the same token, that little distraction takes away again the essence of the game that we all appreciated, the competition. It's what can I do to stand out? What can I do to stand out in order to get that opportunity?
Yeah, I got you. And this is all relative. I mean, it's deeper than that too. The economy happens to be going really well right now. It's really easy to try to get, like right now, companies are still paying money for advertising for all these things and on social accounts. And if any of that were to fall again for a couple of years, a lot of those business models and the easy path to entrepreneurship where you're basically delegating and automating everything out over the internet, that could very easily die off because it's getting spread pretty thin. But for right now, professionals can afford to do that. And even college players. I mean, I talk to different college players and I mentor several, and they're being taught now, even within their university system, how to market and brand themselves now. And it's scary because there might be some truth behind the fact that that's a necessity if they want to compete at that level as far as being a public figure. But it's also something that you're not going to be able to carry a whole lot of that with you into a career outside of athletics. And most will move past athletics at some point. Aaron, you were there in high school at Richland Northeast, and you were an All-American player, unbelievable talent. What was it like for you? Was it different? What was your culture like? What was your team like? You were someone who probably had more exposure than 99% of high school athletes to that upper level treatment or exposure. And it was different at the time because there wasn't as much media coverage. But what was it like for you when you were that star?
I think it's relative to a certain degree. Of course, newspapers were the thing then, and if you had an opportunity to make the news, you were, you know, that was a big thing. So I think it's relative having that exposure. For me, opened up doors for me to, meet people and be exposed to different things. I don't think, I would say your normal or your typical high school experience would be. I wasn't recognized all over the country per se, but within the community, within the state, somewhat within the region. When people recognize you or just know your name, it's a pretty big deal. But I was always that kid that aspired to be in that position. One of the stories I've always told people, a very close friend of mine who's in the coaching business, who was a parade All-American, BJ Mackie. My freshman year at Richland Northeast, he was a senior and he played against Northeast. I think, they killed us. He had 30 something points, 32 points.
Were you guarding him?
And no, I had moved up from JV yet. This is like the beginning of the season, preseason, Irmo. And, you're just watching this guy that you've heard about and his competitive nature and just how, he, at that age, he presented himself, I would say, in a LeBron-like manner where
Right.
it was strictly business. He came in straight face, competitive, handled his business, and he left. There was no trash talking. It was, if you know BJ, there was trash talking, but it wasn't over the top. It wasn't
Right.
entertainment. It was just, I'm coming to take your spirit away, and then I'm leaving. But
His approach to the game was on a different tier. He just had a different mentality.
No question. Completely different mentality that I had seen in a high school setting. Now, in the parks and the street, it's a different ball game. But when he was leaving the gym, the girls, the people were just, hey, can I get your autograph and this and that. And I just watched him leave the gym. Girls from my school or our school at that time they were looking for autographs, and they were just all. And my thought process was, I felt, number one, no one ever is going to walk in my gym and steal the attention or the attraction from the people that have come to support our team. That was just my mentality at that time at 14. And the second thing was, I want to be that guy. I want to be the antagonist that goes in somebody else's gym and puts on a show and then leaves, and the girls are coming up and signing autographs and the guys want to talk to you. So that was my motivation from that point on. And that's what drove me to try to excel, is to be that guy. So, to fall back to the question of, the attention, I think I sought it. I sought it out to be that guy, to get the attention. So I, in a sense, prepared myself to be able to handle it.
That probably helped you and drove you a little bit in your basketball career. Now that you're still a basketball coach, but you're a lot further removed from the playing scene. Do you think that in the larger world, that's healthy to be chasing that attention?
No, I don't.
When did you realize that?
I realized that when I became a professional. The attention continued, the expectations continued, but now, because you have the luxury and the freedom to make a decision of, do I want to go out today and absorb all this energy, or do I want to stay in and be a recluse and just, I don't want to be around people. So it got to that point where, and of course in different countries, you're obviously at a point where the language barriers, the racial barriers, the different things that cause you to become a recluse in a sense, it takes its toll, because the attention, you don't know where it's coming from.
Right.
And of course, growing up in the South and having, Southern tendencies, when you're in a country that, no one looks like you, you begin to question, why are they staring at me because I'm a basketball player on the top team in the country, or they're staring at me because they've never seen a person like me before.
Some of both.
Right. And the tension becomes different. And then, the finances come into it. Now you're in this jockeying match between, I think I'm a star. I'm this persona. If you're not going to pay me, or if you're not going to do things that accommodate certain things that I want, then I'm not going to perform.
Right.
And I'm saying, I was, um, I don't know if this is a G-rated show, but I'm not saying I was an asshole or anything, but um, it just got to a point where I was so ingrained in play and money versus love and play, and money will take care of itself, that it just started taking its toll.
That's the integrity that we talk about being lost from the top down as it's permeating into college and then even a little bit into high school, where that's the commercial reality. And as a
Correct.
professional, it's a lot more obvious. So you experience it there, but we're starting to see it in all different aspects. When you realize that as a professional, that you may have lost a little bit of your integrity in the game, or the culture around the game had changed for you, how did you go about beginning your coaching career and trying to get people to understand what that meant to have some integrity in the game or to have a love for the game? How did you try to teach that to players?
I actually, I tried not to get into coaching. Um, when I stopped playing in 2007, my agent called, asked if I wanted to play, and at that point, my wife and I, discussed it and talked about it, and she could see that I didn't have the same passion and love for the game. Like, it was just going through the motions, and to be traveling country after country and here and there, and you're just not yourself. She saw that. So when I decided to come home, figure out, I'm an athlete. What do I do now? And a couple opportunities came about as far as coaching. I declined them because in my mind I was saying, if I'm still capable of playing at a high level, I'm not going to put that much energy into coaching. When in my mind, I felt like I should still be playing. So it was I was in a weird space at that time. And eventually, when you stop entertaining job offers and you're no longer getting calls to go play, then reality sets in. And so for a good while, I didn't get into coaching until 2011. So that's 4 years removed from me stop playing. And that was just because I was frustrated. I was a little upset with myself because I felt like I could still perform, but I wasn't necessarily in love with the game anymore, or the business of the game took the love away from me. That makes
Right.
sense.
Absolutely.
And my one of my former coaches called and asked if I, be willing to come speak to the team and just, talk to them about my experiences as a player in high school. And I went back to my old school and spoke. And next thing you know, it was, that passion came back to try to show um, these student athletes some of the things that helped me, get to a certain level. And that just transcended into coaching. And I had been working out and training with a very, very close friend of mine, Carlos Powell, for years during the summers. And we continued to train, but I never thought of it as coaching.
Right.
Like, we would work out and I would show him different things that I learned in Europe and show him different things, because I was 3 years ahead of him, but I would just show him, try to mentor him in a certain degree as a big brother. And it never correlated to coaching until years after. And it's just like, well, when you have kids and parents wanting you to help their kids, it's like, well, I've been doing this, since I graduated college. And they're like, well, we didn't know about it. It's like, hell, I didn't know about it either. It was just something I was doing.
Right.
And so one thing led to another. Got into volunteer coaching, did that, enjoyed it. Um, just enjoyed being around young people and trying to give them some exposure to what, if you want to reach a high level, giving them the exposure to mentally to understand what it's going to take and the
Right.
hurdles and obstacles that are out there. And one thing led to another, and now I'm in year 5, 6 being in the coaching. Been training for 12, 13 years. So just being around kids, just showing them that this is what you want. I will give you the truthful, raw, 100% version of what it's going to take to get to the level that you say you want to get to.
Right.
And I think that's where I differentiate myself from a lot of people is I will tell you exactly the pitfalls, the things I dislike, and the things that you like, continue to like it, but you're going to have to overcome the thought about money, the thought about the shoes, the thought about Pell Grant in college. I mean, you have to overcome all the little things that may get in your way and stick to, like the question reference, the integrity and the love for the game.
Stay in high school. Stay in high school, man.
No, stay at the park. Play in the leagues at the park where there's nothing but the game.
That's right. No, I love that. That's where that's where I've eliminated all of my basketball playing and coaching. I did some training for a little bit, both before and after my coaching career, and now all I do is go play at the park, quite literally down the street. Odell Weeks here in Aiken, South Carolina. Walk down there and get some hoops. But other than that, I can't, man. The college game is brutal.
Sunday.
Any college coach, and this is going to sound bad, so I'm not going to. There's no specific person because it's everybody. It's the nature of the game. If you're honest with a player, and you can quote me on this, I'll debate anybody. If you're 100% honest with a player in the recruiting process, you're not going to get that player.
Mm-hmm.
You can't.
No.
Like unless we're in a scenario where it's like, all right, Zion Williamson, you're going to come in and be the best player our program's ever seen. Well, then to some degree, you're telling the truth. But everyone's got to, at least, I'm not going to say lie. Coach, I'm not going to call coaches liars. I'd be calling myself a liar. And I probably say I've never lied to a recruit. But there's so much inflation in the messages that you send, because if you truly believe that you can have a positive impact on a player, and you truly believe that as a coach you're going to impact lives in a great way, and you take your job seriously, you want to try to get players that you can impact. But when that player is being told by every other coach that's recruiting him all of these inflated messages, you'll never get any player worth a darn. And in the game, in the business, right, the business of basketball, the business of coaching, the business of sports, if you don't win after 2 or 3 years, you're done, especially in college. And so you have this balance of, if I tell a very raw, honest truth to a recruit, hey, I think you're going to be a great player here, but my version of great means that you're not going to play more than 5 minutes until your junior year because you have some development to do. But with guys like you as our 7th best player, we could win a conference championship. That kid's not coming. And even though that might be the truth for every team that's recruiting him, he's going to go to this school that says, I think you can start by halfway through your freshman year. I see you as a starter. And that kid's just blowing up. His parents are like, oh my gosh, we can't wait to come see him. And it's unbelievable. I mean, it's difficult to try to navigate that, and that's just the culture. That's the culture. You alluded to it, Aaron. I'm over here talking too much on your interview, but you hit a spot that I feel very passionate about.
You're fine.
You alluded to it a little bit when you got done playing. What sort of roles do you think that former athletes or athletes that get done playing, whether at any level, high school, college, and then done, or play professionally at any level, what role do you think athletes can or do play in our society at large?
I think
outside of athletics, outside of being a coach.
Outside of athletics, I think I would say there's 75 to 80% of corporate America are athletes. And it doesn't have to mean, you play professionally, you play Division 1, 2, or 3 basketball or NAIA. It just means you've had some experience at a high school level, park level. At some point in time, you've been involved with athletics. So you've been around the team experience. You've been around people. You understand the expectations. So I don't think that is any different from, my experience, for example. I played sports, my whole life. And when I was done, it was you know, you get in the job field, you start talking to people, and yeah, I played this or I did that, and it's like try to figure this thing out. So I think sports is an integral part of, you know, post sports life. I think is an integral part of non-sports life. But it still has the same context. Like there still has to be a star player, there still has to be a coach, there still has to be a role player, a glue guy. You know, there's still roles, and you know, even in the business world, you know, I think it's human nature. People want to be the LeBron James of their company or their corporation or their sales team. And then you got your J.R. Smiths who don't know when, you know, the clock's running out and you're down one and you're supposed to take that shot. So I mean, there's still aspects of the game that still permeate in our, you know, in corporate America. So
70
um,
to
it took me a
78%,
while.
is that an Aaron Lucas stat, or is that is that
Oh
something
yeah,
you read or heard somewhere?
any stat I throw out is completely Aaron Lucas, and I would and here goes another one. I'd say 99% of it is not even accurate, but it sounds good.
Trying to send the message, man. That's
Yeah, it sounds good.
let's talk about the Aaron Lucas output here. For those of you that don't follow or don't know about Aaron's output on social media, and we'll connect to his links in the show notes here. Aaron put, was it daily that you do this, or is it every couple days? Have you ever missed a day? The 10.
Yeah, I haven't.
We're
It's a
gonna
top 10.
Aaron
It's a
and I
top 10 list.
are gonna talk after the show about branding this and getting him a blog and maybe putting it on
Hey,
the
let's
Master Your
do it.
Craft website. But Aaron,
Hey, let's do
explain
it.
to these people what you do with this 10 countdown thing that you do on your Facebook.
Um, and well, it's so raw that it doesn't really even have a name. Like I just put a hashtag of top 10 analyst or something like that, which again, that's a random Aaron Lucas type statement. But anyway, I've been doing it actually for about a year now.
Uh-huh.
I don't understand why it picked up traction over the last couple months. Maybe because it was more consistent. But
It's good.
you know, I just wake up or I see something, or you know, we all do it. We just never put it out there.
Right.
So like, you know, if I'm at a grocery store and I see somebody doing something that just seems a little awkward and out of the ordinary, or something that I would do that's awkward and out of the ordinary, I would put it on this list. And then I would go down, you know, I watch the news, I read a lot of books, and I would just ask these questions or make these statements about things that I think people probably think about and do on a regular basis. They've never seen it written out for them to actually pay attention to it and say, you know what, damn, yeah, I do that.
It's a
That's
mix
weird.
of like poetry and analytical response, political commentary,
Yeah,
and personal journaling. I'm gonna send
that's
my link to some of the my favorite ones here, Aaron. But
yeah.
where is it for you? Because I tend to think that this is a skill that, for some reason or another, is not present with athletes, and it's really cool to see you, after your illustrious career, have this mindset. But it seems like you have a very healthy skepticism and critical thinking quality about your day, and I think that that's a message we could try to send to younger players. And for any players listening, I strongly encourage you to, I'm not trying to plug him here, but follow Aaron on Facebook and just start reading these things. Some of them are kind of cryptic and mysterious and like riddles, but the others are very
Yeah.
obvious, and it makes you think. What is it that made you want to start putting it on Facebook, Aaron?
I think social media is social, and a lot of people get misconstrued thinking social media is life. It's not life, it's social.
Right.
I think actually on one of the top tens, I posted, you can't be social and media. And to me, that just simply means, I'll give an example. And I mentor a lot of kids, I'm around a lot of different people.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure you as a coach and as a mentor, you've been through this experience before where a kid says, "Hey, coach, I need some help. I need a couple dollars. I'll pay you back." I mean, we all know, hell, I've asked for money at a point in my life, and I had no intention of paying you back because I'm asking you for the money. So like, when I get to it, I will certainly give it back. Anyway, so I see a kid that I'm familiar with, but I'm not too familiar with. But we have a pretty healthy relationship. You know, I need some help. Can you see, do this, or you think you'll be able to help me with this? I'll look into it. That's usually my response. It's not I will or I won't. I'll look into it. And then the next day I see on social media, you got your new shoes or a chain, or you just got a tattoo, or you're hanging out with your friends. And it's like, well, your priorities are not together.
Mm-hmm.
So it all falls back to you can't be social and media. On social media, you're portraying this, but you're in my message box asking for this. And I'm not going to bring the two together for you.
Right.
And so that's just, that's some of my father's thought process coming out. That's my mother, that's my grandparents, that's, my mentors that just say, hey, bro, I can't do it, or you need to do this and this. And that's usually how I help at the end of the day. It may be a no, you need to sell those, Jordans, or, sell that, copper chain you got on and get a couple dollars and make sure you're able to do what it is you're asking me to do and stop worrying about social media. So I really believe that social media is a great avenue. It's a great tool to expose people and make people think. Being in education and counseling, critical thinking is a hot topic now. And kids being able to analyze something and try to determine an outcome, determine a result, or predict the result, or just being able to process information. So to bring your question all together in one, social media is social. I use it as a platform for me to just be in touch with the outside world, not as outgoing as I used to be in college. I've got a family that I spend most of my time with, and, outside of training and work and everything else. So my only extension really to the outside world, because I don't really go out and party and everything, that's my party. So I just want to, spread a lot of positive energy. People think critically and keep them out of whatever I got going on in my life personally. I think that's the healthy balance. So, but I do need to get my followers up. So I do appreciate the plug. I hit like 2,000.
You don't know this yet, but we're gonna get you blogging this live on the Master Your Craft site, and athletes are gonna start following from all over the country. I honestly think it's very impactful. We'll find a way to brand this thing. I just brought your profile up on one of the last ones you did, September 10th. For example, so Aaron lists us 1 through 10, and he starts going through all these different thoughts and random ideas he has that really stop and make you think. Number 5, and people, it's cool because people comment on it and they'll write number 5 and then make their own comment below it.
Right.
Very social.
Right,
it's almost like you've simplified the basic communication process of, here's my thought, I'm sending it to you, what are you going to say back? And it's like, whoa, people have forgotten how to communicate, they've forgotten how to critically think. But if you meet them on their medium on Facebook, you see these people respond, and these are people that would never engage you potentially if you see them in the store, oh, hey, how's it going? Oh, things are good, but you're somehow able to initiate this conversation about deeper topics without having to overcome the hurdle of social awkwardness. And you get all these people that comment on it. So for example, number 5, you say Naomi Osaka ... earned it. And so people will comment on that. What did you mean by that? Go into detail on that thought you had right there. For those of you that don't know, go ahead and Google, read up on the Serena Williams and Naomi Osaka match in the championship of the U.S. Open. Pretty intense stuff.
There you go. That is exactly why. Because I could easily elaborate on each one. Number one, it'll take forever and people won't read it. So I figured that part out because I don't like reading long posts. But number 2, I want to engage. I want you to engage. You don't have to engage me, but I want you to engage.
in
And if
thought.
Google is, yeah, if Google is this great tool that people do for research, then go look it up. If you don't know what it is, go look it up. And then we can either have a dialogue, or at least you're just going to know who
Yeah.
that person is. So again, the thought process simply was, you know, all the headlines was about Serena's blow up versus this young lady who happens to be Japanese and Haitian. This young lady who has done something personal career. And if you're an athlete, historical milestones are everything. And all we want to talk about is Serena Williams blowing up against a guy sitting in a chair
Yep.
versus talking about this historical moment that just got overshadowed.
Yeah. And feminism, right? Like
So,
all the clickbait, right? Like where the whole thing
oh
became,
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
you can't take any one aspect of the story out of it as to what is important and what is not.
hmm
But when you start to look at it, it's like every part of that story leads to Serena Williams, feminism, and her losing, rather than this tremendously powerful story of Naomi Osaka, who's what, 20 years old,
yeah, something like that.
and
Yeah,
just beat Serena in the U.S. Open Championship.
handedly beat her.
Right, like we
And
forget, for those people that didn't watch the match, it was like she's the reason that Serena lost her cool, right? Like she was
right,
beating her. And
right,
that it's sure, okay, we can analyze what happened once she lost her cool, but truth is, this 20-year-old girl was beating Serena on her own turf at the US Open, where Serena lives. That is
right,
her that's her home court, basically. And this
right, right.
20-year-old Japanese Haitian girl, this unbelievable story, is
hmm
making history. And afterwards, she's in tears because she just essentially beat her childhood idol. And what a
hmm
great story that is as well. And we're over here talking about how people, referees treated Johnny McEnroe different than Serena Williams. It's like, well, yeah, that's a thing, but
Yeah, and that's, I mean,
let's,
that is, it is what it is. Like certain things, I think we're so hypersensitive now in our current state that everything gets an additional feed.
yeah,
Not that it's not like, did she have a right to feel upset? Absolutely, no question. She's Serena. It's like Beyonce's audio guy not doing what he was supposed to do or something like that. She's gonna be upset. I get it. But at the same time, the reason why Serena was so great at in her story is because she did what this young woman did
right,
at her age. And
right,
so instead of embracing what happened and embracing the fact that this milestone happened for the next generation of tennis athletes, it was Serena, feminism, she lost. It was even the point of she lost is a story
yeah.
versus Naomi won. And so,
Squeaky wheel
to
gets the
fall back
grease.
again to exactly and falling back to the post, like my mother even told me, because she was like, you just need to tell people. It's like, no, the point is to engage people so that we can have dialogue. So I guess I'm essentially taking it back to MySpace.
You're the bringing MySpace back.
I'm bringing MySpace back where it's just dialogue before all the likes. And I don't know if you've noticed, but I figured this out too. People will put their number and their thought next to it, and I'll usually reply in the same manner that they reply.
Uh-huh.
But there's more commentary, there's more comments than there are likes or love or wows or whatever the little emojis are.
Are you on
So
Reddit?
people, what is that? Like,
You,
I'm so out of touch with,
yeah,
like,
me too. I just
everything.
discovered what it was as well.
What is that?
Reddit's essentially, the old forum style of, there used to be like message boards and stuff. And
Right.
so Reddit is like still doing that, and it's ultra popular. I mean, there tons of people are on there, and people ask a question or bring up a topic not dissimilar from what you've got. Your
Right.
style is definitely a little bit different, but people do that and then message board back and forth the old school way. And you're definitely doing some of that. I like when I look at these lists and I'm scrolling through your Facebook, this will be Aaron's trending 10 or something like that. Cause this is such a better list of 10 topics than what's trending on Twitter, for example.
That'd be nice. I need to put it on Twitter about it, but I don't. Again, people, if you are listening, I need to get my followers up on Twitter. So
Second plug, the second plug
second,
Aaron's had for his
second
social
plug,
accounts.
yeah.
Oh, all right. Well, we're belaboring this social media thing, but for those of you that are there, go check it out. Aaron is really big on critical thinking. And what's your title right now at Richland Northeast? You're a counselor, right? Or a career guidance?
I am a career. They've given it 10 years down the road. What are you going to be doing? Well, I want to be a doctor. Okay, in a hospital, private practice. Like, what do you want to? So I'll start to grill them and really try to delve into, have you thought this through, or does it just sound good? Some things just sound sexy, and then at the end of the day, you're like, I don't want to be in school for 8 years to make, $95,000 a year to pay back $300,000 it took me to get to $95,000 a year.
Right.
So we'll go through that whole layout, and if they're passionate about it, and if they're I don't want to say combative, but they're passionate about, yes, this is what I like, this is what I enjoy, and they can explain why. Hey, sky's the limit.
Yeah.
Go be great at that.
Right.
Versus a kid like me who is at 38 discovering I like working with my hands. Like, I like getting under the hood of my truck and figuring out stuff. I was that kid that liked puzzles and taking things apart, and whether I put it back together, that was another story. But I was that kid. But through high school, through college and everything else, which, that's another story, it was, I want to be in sales. I want to be in retail. I want to be in clothing industry. I want to do this. I want to do that. Where my natural talents and the things that I truly really like doing wasn't sexy.
You do any
You want
woodwork?
to be a mechanic? No. I'm terrible with wood. But like, if it's a car part or if it's something that I can just dismantle, sign me up.
Fascinating.
And I will try to take it apart as delicately as possible. Whoever wants to put it back together, and they can have a great time with that. But
you said you read a good amount of books, or you like to read?
Oh, definitely. I wish, I could take you around my house. I mean, we have, I'd say in essence of 200 to 300 books.
Nice, man. I got one for you. If you like to, it's more philosophical than anything, but it's called Shop Class as Soul Craft. I actually didn't read it when I was supposed to. It was for a senior class when I was at Mercer, and my professor had us read that in a class, and I skimmed it enough to finish the assignments, and then I went back later and read it, and it's a lot about that. I'm not dissimilar from you in that sense. My dad's a builder, and after I got done with all my playing and after I got done coaching, I left coaching a year and a half ago, and we built a 700 square foot garage on my property. And I realized the value in doing things with your hands. I had always kind of been around it, but I was a city kid. I was in the gym.
Right.
I didn't really want to get my hands dirty.
Right.
After I've done it, now I'm wasting all my time. I'll walk around my yard and find some new landscaping project to do. And that's, people's got to be,
and that's cool.
Yeah. People got to be open to exploring that about themselves, because a lot of them look at a very two-dimensional or even one-dimensional view as young kids or students or athletes. And they say, engineering, they see a big salary and they think, I'll do that. But then again, when you look at it, you see, like you just explained, the long term, even on the day to day, it's like, okay, well, if you think about it, when's the last time in your life that you've gone on, let's say, Google Sheets or Microsoft Excel and really kind of got into creating or designing this efficient, productive sheet for a schedule just because you wanted to be organized for the day? It's like, well, what are you talking about? I've never done that. It's like, well, what do you think engineers do?
Right.
That would be one type. That would be an industrial engineer, or when's the last time you were laying around and you looked at your watch and thought, how does that work? What are those gears doing in there? And then you pick up a book about mechanical engineering. When's the last time you actually spent time on any of these things that you're saying you want to do? And the same goes for basketball.
Correct.
You say,
Correct.
ultimately, you say, I want to win a championship. It's like, well, in order to do that, your role is going to be the defensive stopper. And we don't want you shooting threes because you shot 17% for the last 2 years. So do you
Correct.
really want to help us win? Or do you want to highlight film that you can show your Instagram friends?
Right.
That's
And
hard to hear.
that's what it's boiled down to. Yeah.
What is, Aaron, who is your best mentor? Where did you learn a lot of this stuff from? Where did you get your skepticism and critical thinking?
Life. I mean, I was always that kid. I grew up in a single parent household, so I was exposed and experienced a lot of different things at a young age. So I was always cynical growing up about everything. I questioned everything if it did not make logical sense in my crazy warped brain. Like if it didn't, if it doesn't make sense to me, then I will question, and it has to make sense in my brain. I don't care how you explain it. I don't care what the thought process is for it to make sense to you. It has to make sense to me in order for me to accept it. And so I really didn't have, I would say, a lot of mentors. I think my older brother, watching his experience, his journey through life, was always my gauge, my life meter, the ups and downs, the trials, the tribulations. So I never really had anybody that would sit down and just, hey, you need to think about this or that or this when it comes to just life. Now, basketball, I can name several. And until I got to college, Dr. Cleveland Sellers, who was my African American Studies professor at University of South Carolina, shameless plug. Anyway, I would go to, because I'm really big in African American studies, so I would go to his office after class or between classes instead of going to the Russell House and hanging out. Sometimes I would just go sit and just listen to him about his experiences through civil rights struggle and through his experience, and just get a better scope of the world. And that's kind of where reading started to pick up. I didn't like to read early on, but actually one of my closest friends, Mike Boynton, another shameless plug, who's the head coach at Oklahoma State University. Proud of my guy. He put a book in my hand in 2000, his freshman year, because he read all the time. So I was like, man, what do you read? He gave me a book, True to the Game. If anybody's out there has heard of that book, it's a phenomenal book. I wouldn't say the best book to start with, but it got me engaged into reading. So to fall back to the question, I would just say life has been my best mentor. Just being observant. If you go back to the top 10 questions, I'm very observant to the point where I want to make other people observe and engage into thinking like they normally wouldn't think, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. You're serving as the mentor to a larger population or to a larger group, the same way that, via the same lens of what your experience was. You're providing that to folks.
Correct.
I mean, you're
Correct.
older than me, Aaron, but both of us being, well, I'm not a coach anymore by trade, but kind of being in similar fields. I mean, I read some of your stuff and it helps me provoke thought. I'm big on that. I've got a blog and I do some writing and stuff myself. And there have been times that I've actually read some of what you've written and what you've thought about, and it sparked my own ideas and my own writings. And I think that's tremendously impactful and something that we need to continue to promote those things and that critical thinking, because if we don't, it's way too easy for all of the input or the what would you call it, the messages and the symbols that our younger kids are receiving to be totally overrun by nonsense on the web, right? So for you to be on that platform trying to provide, if one of every 100 kids sees your post and sees one number 3 and it resonates with them, and it likens them or they liken that to something that they can learn from, that they enjoy, then I think it's worth it, because we've got to promote that positive message and that thinking process. Aaron, let's change gears just a little bit here. Who's your favorite NBA player? Or you know what? I take that back. Who's your favorite athlete at the professional level? Any sport.
Favorite athlete? That is a good current, right?
Doesn't have to be. You can give me a former.
Gotcha. My favorite athlete and player was Allen Iverson.
Why is that?
Because at the time, I think really it was just trying to correlate with the experience of being a small player that wasn't necessarily wanting to be boxed into a position. And he redefined and defied what it meant to be an athlete and in my generation during my time, because he was an all-world football player, which I felt I could have been, that got cut short. He was an all-world basketball player, which I wanted to be, and he excelled in it, and he didn't take trying to be boxed in as an answer.
Right.
Pun intended. Like, he's the answer. But his career was the I don't want to say the antithesis of all small guards problems, but it was I think a lot of us during that era didn't get opportunities because obviously we weren't Allen Iverson, and yet we were trying to be.
Right.
Does that make sense? So I felt I was a better scoring guard, and I think I was recruited, from various schools for who I was, but with a different picture in mind. Excuse me. So that goes back to the coaching thing you were talking about. They're recruiting you, telling you you're great at what you do, but in their mind, I think it was, okay, we can bring him in. He'll be a great point guard. He defends well. He can score the basketball if we need him to.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I am who I am. So Allen Iverson was like the guy that just epitomized the small guard problem during my era. And that was, you can still be effective, you can still be efficient, you can still be respected, regardless of your size, if you just go out and compete and just be who you are. And so, and that was strictly athletically, that he made a big impact on me as a professional, because he was who he was, not the off court stuff, not the dress code, none of that. Just him as a player was, this is what all of us want to be like.
Yeah. You might not be the only 6'1" athletic guard who can rebound, pass, and score that's a fan of Allen Iverson, but I think your take on it might be a little bit different.
Oh, it's different. Yeah. And 6'1" is very generous, so I will accept that.
I'm pretty sure your bio online, right below where it says All-American and former or current all-time leading scorer at your high school, I want to say it says 6'1.5". So they're still doing you a favor.
Look, I will take the half and anything that says starts with 6.
That's funny. This word, our next question may or may not be a word that you would use to describe Allen Iverson. I don't know, but you can take it wherever you want. Everyone's got to answer this question that comes on the show. Take it wherever you want. An example, a story, a definition, how you teach it, but the word is grit.
Grit. I think it's just grit goes along with tenacity. I think grit goes along with determination. I think grit goes along with confidence. I think grit goes along with fear. I think all of those kind of incorporate what grit to me means, because those who have faced challenges in their life, those who have been against the, with their back against the wall, have to show some level of grit in order to overachieve or get past whatever their struggles are.
Mm-hmm.
And we've all had our moments where we had to show grit. We've all had our moments that bring the best of us out. Actually, it's interesting that you asked that question. Pastor Charles B. Jackson Sr., Brooklyn Baptist Church here in Columbia, South Carolina, preached about that on Sunday, about essentially, to put in a nutshell, not to get all pastoral on you
No,
or
go for
clergy
it.
on you, but
No, you can.
it was more so about, we praise and we give God praise when we're the most, when our backs against the wall, we face difficult times. And he called it past the trouble. And he said, past the trouble has brought more people closer to God than anything else. So it wasn't success. It wasn't failure per se. It was something that presented a challenge or something that caused a difficulty in your life where the only resource that you knew to turn to was God.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, falling back to the question of grit, I think we all have been to a point where we didn't know we had grit. But I think, again, fear brings grit out more than anything else. Whether you're scared to fail, whether you're scared of an obstacle, whether you're scared of not being who everybody expects you to be, if you're scared of somebody who you may perceive that's better than you, and you have to prove you are who you are, I think that brings grit out, with that, regardless of what the circumstance is, sports, academia, life, whatever it is. I think you get exposed to, when you're exposed, great word, I talk to myself a lot anyway, when you're exposed to yourself, you have a great understanding of who you are as a person. You know what your shortcomings are. So when those shortcomings start to present themselves, you can either fold or you can show grit and try to prove that you are who you think and who you say you are.
The response to that sort of difficulty or adversity. And yeah, do you think that's the best way that it's learned or trained, is just essentially from experience? You kind of get thrust into that scenario, and I'm not going to pretend like I'm a scientist here, but I believe it's your limbic system, part of your brain, that's in charge of analyzing some of your
That's a great
responses.
question. That, I think that's above my intellectual capacity. I just try to keep it as simple as possible.
It's the fight or flight.
But
You've heard that before. I know you know that.
fight or flight, yeah.
So
When
when
you
it's
grow,
time for fight or flight, and you're put in a scenario where you've got to have some kind of response, just every once in a while the scenario is set up where it requires a certain level of grit to get through it. And once you feel that once or twice, I think there's some positive reinforcement there in understanding or realizing what it takes to overcome a level of adversity to a positive outcome, because you can always curl up in fetal position and kind of let the world run rampant over you, because with whatever adversity is coming at you. But
right?
once you feel what it's like to fight a little bit, to scrap, to claw a little bit, to get through that, and then you stand victorious on the other side of that adversity, that can be a really positive tool for people to realize what that can do for you. Speaking of tools, this is one of the last questions we have here. Development for you right now, Aaron. You're still a coach. You're an assistant coach, and you're not a player anymore. Maybe you go to the gym once in a while and still get some shots up. But professional development for you is different than when you were a player. What are you doing now to make yourself a better person, to improve yourself and your maybe your mental capacity or your cerebral thought? You said you've alluded to reading books. Can you give us some titles of some books that have really impacted you, or some habits that you do to try to become a better person?
Wow, several books in my head. I can't think of names right now because I'll mix them up. Plus author, I think if I would give a title, I need to give an author, but I'll
I'll link
save
to
that.
the author. If you do have some titles off the top of your head, I can link to them and bring that together in the notes of the show.
Well, I can give you one author actually. I just finished reading his Charlamagne the God's book. his book that just came out. It was interesting in several regards, because it was open, it was honest, it was a little far left, some of the dialogue, but I understood it. The book I'm currently reading, I Like What I Write by Steve Biko. It's more of a poetry book, but that's another one that I've read recently. All of Dan Brown's books, I read those a while ago. The Da Vinci Code, Digital Fortress,
Yeah.
any of those are very good if you want to just get into reading. I'm currently reading the psychological, I can't remember the name of it because I just picked it up. It's essentially about, it talks about a term that's used called PTSS, post-traumatic slave syndrome, and just talks about more so what the African American experience is like and why we do certain things that we do in our culture, our mannerisms, our fears, our gestures. You name it. When it comes to the African American experience, it really delves into how the slave experience, the transatlantic transportation of people from Western Africa to North America, all of that comes into play in how we are perceived, how we act, how we conduct ourselves in modern day society. So I'm reading that currently at the moment. I'll get you the title later. I'll send it to you. I
Yeah,
don't know
great.
if that helps, but I read just about any and everything. Again, most of it pertains to the African American experience because I believe there's a phrase called Sankofa, and in order to know where you're going, you got to know where you come from. And so I'm a firm believer in until, and this goes for anybody, until you understand where you come from and who you are, how you were made up as a person, character-wise, family-wise, your orientation as far as where you started, geographically, like all of that plays into how you conduct yourself as a person. And once you understand that part of who you are, then I think you handle yourself differently in the world. So I was, I've been that kid since I was in high school. I started reading those type of books in high school, and started asking those questions when I was in high school. So going to European countries and seeing the American experience from a different light all went full circle for me, because I was the guy that wanted to learn Lithuanian, wanted to learn Russian and Hebrew and French and Spanish, all the different countries, and Turkish, wanted to learn those languages because I understand who I am as a person and as American, and being viewed as an American, I need to incorporate myself into your country and your culture and your customs in order for you to feel comfortable, in order for me to feel comfortable.
Right.
So, I have a different view of the world. Obviously, traveling the world has been a phenomenal experience and taught me a lot, but I've always been that type of person where I would rather open myself up to understanding you and you understanding me, versus me trying to say this is my way, and if you don't like it, then stay away from me. I'd rather you understand, we have a clear understanding of who we are as people.
Yeah.
Then whatever my way is, you will understand that already. And if it doesn't mesh with you, then we're fine. We can part ways, or we'll know where we stand.
And self-reflection is like the best.
It's vital.
Self-reflection and self-examination, self-responsibility are like the foundations of respect, right? Like, as long as it's definitely a lot more complex than stay in your own lane, or all you really have is you, and those phrases that we often hear. But that's kind of the idea. Like, if you worry most or take care of most the well-being of yourself and your own mental thoughts and capacity, your place in the world will become a lot more clear, and you'll be able to navigate with everyone else who's also worried about their own path and their own life. And I think that's really important. Man, Aaron, this is so much deeper than just sports. I'm really glad that you're able to share some of this stuff, man. We're going to go ahead and wrap up. We got one last question. Waking message. Everyone finishes with this. You are the alarm clock to all of America, right? Boom, beep, beep, beep. Their alarm goes off. You have like 10 or 15 seconds to send a message to every person in America. What would that message be?
I would take it from the current book, and I'll send the title and information out. But one of the things it talks about in the introduction is in Africa, the Naim tribe, they greet each other by asking a simple question in their language, but the question is, how are the children? How are the children? The basis behind that is, regardless of what's going on in the world, regardless of what you have going on in your life, the basic aspect of taking care of the children and understanding the importance of the children, it gives you a different shape and a worldview of how things should be.
I was going to say how we treat our children. Like, you can tell a lot about a society by how we treat our children, because it's the direct exemplification of our ability to look out for the good of the whole. Like, if you're someone who understands that while personal achievement and personal responsibility is important, that we all have a role to play to make things better, easier, functioning. Survival has a lot to do with community and society. What we do with our children has a direct correlation to our commitment to that. Because if we don't understand that our children are our future, our children are going to be the ones that have the largest impact on our own lives. Once we're all old fogies and don't really want to deal with anybody anymore and keep our circles extra small and sit in our home, well, who's going to be dictating what direction that our society goes? It's going to be the people that are children now. And if we aren't taking their education or their capacity to think critically and things like that seriously, well, then it tells you a lot about what you think about having a good functioning society full of good people. That's really fascinating. I've never really thought of that.
Check the early top 10 from this year, from like the summertime. And I think I've said it several times, where if you want change the music. And some of that just correlates to, if it's a lot of it's just cultural. If you want change, you have to change certain aspects. Now, I'm not saying you can't be creative as an artist and as a musician, but you can't do a backpack drive and yet you're talking about drugs and the struggle and getting it out the mud and all these other colloquial
and glorifying it.
Right. Correct.
Right.
And so that, again, if you don't have a basic understanding of taking care of young people, whether they're yours or not, I think that goes back to the village aspect of take care of the children in your village, and just want to see them do things at a higher level and learn from your experiences so that we can grow as a society. If you don't have that basic intuition, then definitely stay away from me, because if it's not positive energy, if it's not a positive vibration, I don't want anything to do with it.
Right. It's not worth promoting. It's not worth sharing. It's not worth my time. I think that your perspective on all these things has been tremendous, and I really appreciate you taking the time, man. There's a lot of these things we've touched on that I know for me personally, I could talk with you for hours on. Some of this stuff is really deep and important, but unfortunately, we've got to keep it to a certain time limit so that my account on Apple Podcasts and everywhere that I blast this thing doesn't kick me off or prevent me. And, we do. Do you want? I usually do the sponsors. I finally got my first sponsor for this show. It's going to be recorded in the post. Do you want me to put it in now? Since we're playing?
Let's put it in now. I want to blast.
Do you know what Baru nuts are?
No.
I saw you make a post on Facebook about how everyone bought up all the bread and other stuff at the store, but they left all the fruit, veggies, and nuts.
Look, I'm in.
So Baru nuts, right? I'm not going to go into too much detail because I want you to go check it out. But they're one of the healthiest nuts in the world. Right now, there's a company called, you can go to barukas.com. That's BARUKAS.com. And I eat these things like crazy. I've discovered them from a friend of mine, and I linked up with them after they found out about my podcast. And now they're offering 15% off your first order if you'd use code Jacob, Jakob. I've got my first affiliate, first sponsor for the show. So go ahead and order you guys some Baru nuts.
Hey, you gotta put them in the video, man.
We need to put
that package.
Hey, if you're about to get hit by the hurricane, now might be a good time to load up on Baru nuts.
Well, we're all loaded up.
Go ahead and plug yourself, Aaron. Where can people find more of you on social media and whatnot? Where can they get some more Aaron Lucas?
It's Facebook. Obviously, you can find me. It's AA, 2 capitals, Lucas, Lucas. Instagram, it is AA Lucas, the number 5. Send a request. I hope you don't have any type of crazy paraphernalia, anything that will make me not accept you, because I'm a private account, so I don't accept everybody unless you have some positive going on in your life. But those are the main 2 places. I'm on Twitter as well, A5 Lucas, but I tweet random like educational stuff. So I'm boring on Twitter than I would say I am on other mediums. But anyway, if you want to follow, I appreciate it. This has been a great experience. I'm a little deeper than I may come off as, but again, I want you to engage. So
that's awesome, man. Well, I appreciate you taking the time, Aaron. I know the listeners will appreciate it well. All right, everybody. We'll talk to you later. Team, don't go anywhere just yet. Give me 1 second. I'll be brief here. First of all, I owe a massive thank you from the bottom of my heart for those of you that have been supporting our show in any way, whether it's watching or listening, or especially if you've subscribed to the blog or the podcasts on any of our various accounts. That and any engagement on social media is something that myself and the team are so thankful for. In a world of negative messages and nonsense all over the internet, it's really hard to try to stand out as a great source of intellect and wisdom and positivity in the messages that we're sending. So all of those things that you do to support us are unbelievably helpful, and I don't want them to go unnoticed. So thank you for that. And secondly, and much to my own chagrin, I've set up a Patreon account. If you don't know what that is, I'll explain it here in a second. But I do want to note that I'm putting this at the end of the show, where there's probably only 1% of our listeners still on here, because I was a little bit shy towards setting it up until a few good business mentors of mine really convinced me that it was something worth doing. Patreon is a platform that I go and set up on behalf of our business or on our account, and create different tiers that people can contribute to be part of the society. So right now, I believe there's 5 tiers. The cheapest one starts at $2. And what it is it's a way for anyone who sees enough value in what our team is producing to contribute to financially. It's not something that is obligated. You'll never have to give money to the Patreon. We produce all these things for free. But between the time and effort that we put in to make this a great show and to bring quality guests on, there is a lot of time value and money value that we are spending. So for the sort of person who's willing to throw a little bit of money at the causes that they think are just and worthwhile, Patreon is where you can support us. If you go to patreon.com/Jacob Gollin, patreon.com/JAKOBGOLLON, you can donate to any one of many tiers that are there. And there are different ways that we've incentivized it, from some gear and apparel all the way up to getting personal training sessions and being able to comment and talk on the shows that we have, or dictate what topics we cover in the show. There's some pretty creative ways that you can be a part of the community. And again, there's no obligation here. This is for the people that are willing to give a little bit of money, forfeit a few Starbucks coffees and throw some our way to try to compensate us for the time that we're putting in. Rest assured that all the money that comes into this Patreon is going right back into the equipment and the process necessary to try to bring you guys a quality show and a quality product. So again, this is something I was a little bit shy to at first, but if you think that we're bringing you true value and you want to contribute in any way financially, that's the place to do it. And again, that's something that's unbelievably helpful and really kind of buys us more time to be able to create and do things at a very high level. We want to compete with some of the better publications out there. In order to do so, we need support from folks like you. So thank you so much for listening. We'll talk to you soon. Go forth and master your craft.